The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched before Jake Morrison like a massive dome of silver and light. 47 different alien species filled the chamber, their voices creating a strange mix of sounds that the translation devices turned into words he could understand. Jake sat in the human section, his uniform pressed and clean, but his hands were shaking slightly. Today would decide everything for Earth, and all human colonies scattered across the stars. The Vorthak representative stood at the center podium, its long tentacles moving as it spoke. The creature's skin was a dark purple color, and its eyes glowed with a cold blue light. When it spoke, Jake felt his stomach drop. The words were simple, but terrible. Humanity was being cut off from the galactic community. No more trade, no more communication, no more travel between star systems. They were being locked in their own solar system like prisoners. Lisa Carter, Earth's top diplomat, jumped to her feet. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her voice was strong and clear. She had spent 20 years working with alien species, learning their ways, building trust. Now all that work was falling apart. She spoke to the council about humanity's contributions, about the medicines they had shared, the technology they had given freely, the protection they had offered to weaker species. Her words echoed in the vast chamber, but Jake could see from the alien faces that most had already made up their minds. The hegemony delegate was next to speak. Its body looked like living crystal, changing colors as it moved. When it talked, the crystal body pulsed with bright flashes. It accused humans of being too violent, too quick to fight, too dangerous to trust. It showed images of human military ships, human soldiers training, human weapons being tested. Everything looked threatening when shown this way, even though Jake knew these were just normal defense preparations. Admiral Ben Rodriguez sat beside Jake, his weathered face showing no emotion. The old soldier had fought in 3 different conflicts, always protecting human colonies from pirates and raiders. Now he was being called a warmonger by creatures who had never had to defend anyone. Rodriguez leaned over and whispered to Jake, "They're afraid of us because we don't back down. That scares them more than any weapon." The voting began. Each species announced their choice in their own language before the translation came through. The Altarians voted yes to the blockade. The Xanthari voted yes. The Corellians voted yes. One by one, species that had once called humans friends and allies now turned their backs. Some seemed sad about it, but they voted yes anyway. Fear was stronger than friendship in the council chambers. Only 12 species voted against the blockade. Most were small, weak civilizations that humans had helped in the past. Their votes didn't matter. The final count was 35 in favor, 12 against. Humanity was officially cut off from the galactic community. Lisa Carter made one last attempt to change their minds. She stood at the human podium and looked around the chamber. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the pain in it. She talked about the diseases humans had helped cure, the disasters where human ships had been first to arrive with aid, the times human soldiers had died protecting alien worlds. She reminded them that humans had never started a war, only finished them when others attacked first. The Vorthak representative cut her off. Its tentacles waved dismissively as it declared the vote final. Human communication arrays would be shut down within the hour. All human ships outside the solar system had 24 hours to return home or be destroyed. Any attempt to leave Earth's system would be met with force. The blockade would continue until humanity learned to be more peaceful, which the Vorthak side might take centuries. Jake watched Admiral Rodriguez stand up slowly. The old man's face was like stone as he activated his communication device one final time. His message was brief and direct. He told Earth's government what had happened, and ordered all human ships to return home immediately. He told the colony worlds to prepare for isolation. Then he looked directly at the Vorthak representative and said something that made Jake's heart race with pride and fear at the same time. "You think you're making the galaxy safer by caging us," Rodriguez said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "But you're making a mistake that will cost you everything. Humans don't break when you isolate us. We adapt. We grow stronger." And when the real threats come, you'll realize you just threw away your best defenders." The alien delegates laughed and made dismissive gestures. They thought the Admiral was just making empty threats. Jake could see they believed humans would become weak and desperate without galactic support. They had no idea how wrong they were. The quantum communication arrays died with a sound like breaking glass. The connection between Earth and the galactic network was severed instantly. Jake felt the silence like a physical weight pressing down on him. For 50 years, humanity had been part of something bigger. Now they were alone again, surrounded by species that feared them too much to trust them. As the council session ended, Jake walked with Lisa Carter and Admiral Rodriguez toward their ship. The corridors of the station seemed different now, hostile. Alien beings who had once nodded politely now looked away or stared with suspicious eyes. Security guards followed them, making sure they left quickly. Before entering their ship, Lisa Carter turned back toward the council chambers. Tears ran down her cheeks, but her voice was firm when she spoke. "They'll regret this decision. When the darkness comes for them, they'll remember that they chose fear over friendship. And humans will remember too." The human ship undocked from the station and began its journey back to Earth. Behind them, the great galactic civilization continued its daily business, confident that they had solved a dangerous problem. They had no way of knowing that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The silence they had imposed on humanity would soon become their own doom. 5 years had passed since the Great Silence began. Captain Amy Parker stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship was nothing like the vessels humans had built when they were part of the Galactic Council. This one was faster, stronger, and used technology that no alien species had ever seen before. The isolation had changed humanity in ways the Council never expected. Instead of growing weak, humans had become more creative, more determined. Dr. Kevin Walsh had been working day and night in his laboratory on Earth, trying to solve the problem of faster-than-light travel without using the Council's jump gates. The breakthrough came in the 3rd year of isolation when he discovered how to fold space itself. "Captain, we're picking up something strange on the long-range sensors," reported Lieutenant Danny Brooks from his station. The young officer had been born in space on one of the human colony ships, and he understood the darkness between stars better than most. "There are massive energy readings coming from the Kepler system, but they don't match anything in our databases." Amy Parker had been exploring the far edges of known space, far from Council patrol routes, mapping new systems and looking for resources humanity would need to survive on their own. The Kepler system was supposed to be empty, just another collection of dead rocks orbiting a dying star. Energy readings that big meant something was very wrong. "Take us there, but keep us ready to jump away fast," Parker ordered. "If the Council has ships out here, we don't want to give them an excuse to start shooting." The New Horizon folded space around itself and appeared near the Kepler system in seconds. What they found there made everyone on the bridge stop breathing for a moment. Ships were fighting in the space around the 4th planet, but these weren't Council vessels. The attacking ships looked like they were made of metal and flesh grown together, moving in ways that hurt to watch. The defending ships were sleek and silver, firing weapons that left trails of blue fire across the darkness. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. "Captain, I'm getting distress signals from the silver ships. They're not speaking any language in our translation database, but the computer is working on it." And the metal and flesh ships were winning. As Parker watched, 3 of the silver vessels exploded in bright flashes of light. The attacking ships moved toward the planet like hungry animals, completely ignoring the human vessel. Whatever they were, they didn't see the New Horizon as a threat worth noticing. "We have partial translation," Kim reported. "The silver ships are calling the attackers devourers and they're begging for help." "Captain, they're saying something about their children, about evacuation ships that won't make it out in time." Parker had been a military officer before becoming an explorer. She had seen enough battles to know when someone was about to lose everything. The smart thing would be to leave immediately, to report back to Earth and let someone else make the hard decisions. But she looked at the silver ships making their desperate last stand and made a choice that would change everything. All weapons online, she ordered. Target the nearest Devourer ship. Let's even the odds a little. The New Horizons weapons were based on human military technology, improved over 5 years of desperate innovation. The first shot tore through a Devourer ship like it was made of paper. The second shot destroyed another one completely. Suddenly, the battle looked very different. The silver ships seemed as surprised as the Devourers. One of them turned toward the New Horizon, weapons charging, clearly thinking the humans were another enemy. But Parker had her communications officer broadcast on all frequencies, using the translation program to send a simple message in the aliens' language. We are friends. We want to help. The silver ship hesitated, then responded with coordinates for a rendezvous point. The battle continued, but now the Devourers were caught between two forces. The creatures were deadly fighters, but they seemed confused by human tactics. They were used to enemies who fought in predictable patterns, not humans who attacked from impossible angles using space-folding technology. When the last Devourer ship was destroyed, Parker took the New Horizon to meet with the largest silver vessel. The alien ship was beautiful but damaged, its hull scarred by weapons that looked like they had tried to eat through the metal. The captain who appeared on their communication screen was unlike any species in the Council databases. He was tall and covered in scales that changed color as he spoke. His eyes were large and golden, and there were scars across his face that spoke of many battles. When the translation came through, his voice was deep and tired, like someone who had been fighting for a very long time. I am Commander Vextar of the Draconis fleet, he said. You are not known to us, but you fight with honor. Who are you, and why do you help strangers? I'm Captain Amy Parker of the human ship New Horizon, she replied. We help because that's what friends do. Tell us about these Devourers. What Commander Vextar told them made Parker's blood run cold. The Devourers had been attacking worlds on the edge of the galaxy for over 20 years, consuming everything living and leaving behind only empty husks of planets. They were not a natural species, but something created, weapons of war that had outlived their makers and continued their mission of destruction. The Draconis had been fighting them alone for 2 decades, losing ground every year. Their homeworld was already gone, consumed along with billions of their people. The fleet Parker had helped save was all that remained of their entire civilization, desperately trying to find a new world where they could make a stand. The Great Council knows of this threat, Vextar said, his scales turning a darker color that the translation program interpreted as anger and sadness. We sent ambassadors to them 15 years ago, begging for help. They told us the core worlds were too valuable to risk defending the rim. They built barriers around their own systems and left us to die alone. Parker felt something cold settle in her stomach. How many worlds have been lost? 43 full systems. Hundreds of billions of lives. The Devourers grow stronger with each world they consume, taking the knowledge and technology of those they destroy. Soon they will be strong enough to challenge even the Council's core defenses. As Parker listened to the full scope of the disaster, she realized that humanity's isolation might have been a blessing in disguise. While the Council had been hiding behind their barriers, humans had been pushed to develop new technologies, new ways of thinking about warfare and survival. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that grew stronger when cut off from help. Commander Vextar, she said, would you be willing to come with us? There are people on Earth who need to hear this story. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to fight back against these Devourers. The Draconis commander's scales shifted to a color the computer translated as hope mixed with disbelief. You would take refugees from a dying species? Without asking for tribute or territory in return? That's what humans do, Parker replied. We don't leave friends behind. As the combined human and Draconis ships prepared to fold space back toward Earth, Parker wondered what Admiral Rodriguez and the other leaders would say when they learned the truth. The Council hadn't just abandoned humanity out of fear. They had abandoned the entire galaxy to a threat they were too cowardly to face. The silence they had imposed on humans was about to be broken in a way they never expected. The news of the Devour threat spread through humanity's hidden networks like wildfire. Admiral Ben Rodriguez stood in the command center of the battleship Defiance, watching the holographic display that showed the true scope of the galactic crisis. Red dots marked worlds that had been consumed, yellow dots showed systems under attack, and green dots represented the few safe areas that remained. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The Devourers were working their way steadily toward the galaxy's center, where the Council worlds waited behind their barriers. Dr. Rachel Kim had been studying the Draconis data for 3 months, working with teams of human scientists to understand the enemy they now faced. Her research station on Luna buzzed with activity as xenobiologists, weapons specialists, and tactical analysts worked together to find weaknesses in the Devourer forces. What they discovered was both fascinating and horrifying. Admiral, the Devourers aren't just mindless destroyers, Rachel reported during the daily briefing. They're learning from every world they consume. Each attack is more sophisticated than the last. They're adapting to overcome the defenses they encounter, which explains why no one has been able to stop them. Rodriguez studied the analysis with the calm expression that had made him famous throughout human space. At 70 years old, he had seen enough wars to know that understanding your enemy was the first step toward defeating them. But this enemy was unlike anything humans had ever faced before. What about their weaknesses? He asked. They seem to have trouble with unpredictable tactics, Rachel replied. The Draconis fought them using traditional fleet formations and defensive strategies. Captain Parker's success came from using our space-folding technology in ways they couldn't anticipate. They're designed to overcome known patterns of warfare, but they struggle when faced with something completely new. This gave Rodriguez an idea that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of waiting for the Devourers to reach human space, he decided to take the fight to them. The first target was Zarian Prime, a world of 6 billion inhabitants, that the Council had already written off as lost. The Devourers had been attacking the system for 2 weeks, and the planet's defenses were failing. Captain Steve Turner commanded the rescue fleet that folded space directly into the Zarian system. His ships appeared not in the usual defensive positions, but scattered throughout the system in a pattern that seemed random but was actually carefully calculated. The Defiance materialized inside the formation of Devourer ships, its weapons, firing before the enemy could react. All ships, execute Lightning Pattern 7, Turner ordered over the communication network. Remember, we're not here to destroy them all. We're here to save lives. The human ships moved like dancers, appearing and disappearing throughout the system as they used their space-folding drives to strike from impossible angles. The Devourers tried to adapt, but every time they predicted where a human ship would appear next, it materialized somewhere completely different. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos directed by human tactical genius, while the fleet kept the Devourers busy. Elena Vasquez led the evacuation operation from her ship, the Sanctuary. She had been a transport pilot before the isolation began, moving cargo between human colonies. Now she was moving people, entire populations fleeing from worlds that could no longer protect them. Zarian ground control, this is Sanctuary, she broadcast to the planet below. We have 200 transport ships ready for immediate evacuation. Send us your priority lists and we'll get your people out of there. The evacuation was a miracle of coordination and courage. Human pilots flew their ships through Devourer fire to reach the planet's surface, loading refugees as fast as the transport systems could handle them. They saved 4 billion people in 18 hours, losing only 12 ships in the process. It was a rescue operation on a scale never before attempted, and it sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The rescued Zarionians were amazed by what they had witnessed. They had never seen warfare conducted with such precision and creativity. More importantly, they had never encountered a species willing to risk everything to save strangers. As word of the rescue spread through refugee networks and underground communication channels, more species began to reach out to humanity. The Karathi were next to make contact. Their homeworld had fallen 6 months earlier, but several million survivors had escaped in a fleet of civilian ships. They had been hiding in empty star systems, running low on supplies and hope. When human ships found them, the Karathi expected to be enslaved or robbed. Instead, they were offered food, medical supplies, and protection. "Why do you help us?" asked Elder Morgan, the leader of the Karathi refugees. "What do you want in return?" Captain Amy Parker, now commanding a small fleet of exploration vessels, gave the answer that was becoming humanity's signature response. "We help because it's the right thing to do. The only thing we want in return is your friendship." The Underground Railroad, as Elena Vasquez had started calling her refugee network, grew larger every month. Human ships moved through the galaxy's empty spaces, staying away from Council patrol routes, following distress signals and rumors of survivors. They rescued the Valdani from their dying space stations, the Quillex from the mining colonies where they had been hiding, and dozens of other species that the Council had abandoned. To their fate, each rescue mission brought new allies and valuable intelligence about both the Devourers and the Council's failures. The refugees told stories of Council representatives who had promised protection and then fled when the first Devourer ships appeared. They spoke of entire fleets that had been ordered to retreat to core systems, leaving billions to die alone. Dr. Rachel Kim made another crucial discovery during this period. By studying captured Devourer technology, she learned that the creatures were not just weapons, but weapons with a specific target. They had been created by an ancient species called the Morgoth as an act of revenge against those who had betrayed them in a long-forgotten war. The weapon had evolved beyond its creator's control, but its basic programming remained: destroy those who abandon their allies. "Admiral," Rachel reported with excitement and horror in her voice, "the Devourers are drawn to species that practice abandonment. They're programmed to target civilizations that leave their weak behind. The Council's policy of abandoning rim worlds isn't just cowardly. It's like sending out a dinner invitation to these things." This explained why the Devourers had ignored human space so far. Humanity's rescue missions and refugee protection had marked them as the opposite of what the creatures were designed to hunt. But it also meant that the Council worlds, with their history of abandoning allies, were the Devourers' ultimate prize. Rodriguez realized that humanity was in a unique position. They had the military strength to fight the Devourers, the moral authority to unite the abandoned species, and the tactical advantage of being underestimated by both their enemies and their former allies. The question was whether they could build a resistance network strong enough to face the coming storm. The answer came from an unexpected source. Jake Morrison, the young diplomat who had witnessed humanity's expulsion from the Council, had spent 5 years building secret communication networks with sympathetic alien species. His message to Admiral Rodriguez was brief but important. "Sir, we have friends inside Council space. They're ready to help when you give the word." The stage was set for the greatest conflict in galactic history, and humanity found itself leading an alliance of the abandoned against forces that both the Devourers and the Council had never expected to face. The first Council world to fall was Vorth Prime, homeworld of the species that had led the vote to isolate humanity. The Devourers arrived without warning, their biomechanical ships emerging from deep space like a plague of metal and flesh. The Vorthak fleet, confident in their advanced shields and energy weapons, met them in traditional battle formation. They lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. Counselor Veltar of the Altarians watched the destruction from her command ship in the neighboring system, her crystalline body flickering with patterns of fear and disbelief. The barriers that were supposed to protect the core worlds had failed completely. The Devourers had somehow learned to bypass the quantum barriers, appearing inside the defended systems as if the massive defensive networks didn't exist. "How is this possible?" she asked her military advisor, General Kexton. "The barriers have held for 3 years. Nothing should be able to get through them." The general's form darkened with shame as he delivered his report. The Devourers have been studying our defenses by attacking the rim worlds. Every barrier we built, every tactic we used, they learned from the battles we abandoned. They know our weaknesses better than we do because they've been fighting our technology for 20 years while we hid behind our walls. The truth was worse than Veltar had imagined. The Council's strategy of protecting only the core worlds had given the Devourers time to study and adapt to their defenses. Every abandoned world, every species left to fight alone, had been a learning experience for the enemy. Now that knowledge was being used to tear through Council space like a knife through cloth. The hegemony worlds fell next, their crystal cities, turning to dust under devourer weapons that seemed designed specifically to counter their crystalline technology. The creatures had learned from fighting the crystal-based Zirionians 2 years earlier, developing new types of bioweapons that shattered crystal structures at the molecular level. Panic spread through the Council chambers as reports came in from across their territory. The Xanthari colonies were under attack. The Corellian defense fleets were being destroyed faster than they could retreat. Entire systems were going dark as the Devourers consumed world after world, growing stronger with each victory. In desperation, the remaining Council members attempted to contact Earth, only to discover that their isolation of humanity had created an unexpected problem. Their own communication networks had deteriorated over the 5 years of the blockade. Without human technical support, which they had taken for granted, their quantum communication arrays were failing at the worst possible time. It took them 3 days to establish contact with a human vessel, and when they did, it wasn't through official channels. A damaged Council ship limping away from the destruction of hegemony, Prime encountered one of Elena Vasquez's refugee transport vessels. The ship was called Mercy's Hand, and it was carrying survivors from 6 different species that the Council had abandoned. The Council ship captain, a proud Altarian named Rexstar, expected the human vessel to flee or attack. Instead, Mercy's Hand offered medical assistance and sanctuary. The human captain, a woman named Linda Hayes, invited the Altarian refugees aboard her ship, treating their wounded and offering them food from her own supplies. "Why do you help us?" Rexstar asked, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. "Your species was cast out by the Council. We voted for your isolation." Linda Hayes gave him the answer that had become humanity's standard response, because it's the right thing to do. "We don't abandon people who need help, even if they've abandoned us." Through Rexstar, the Council finally managed to make contact with Admiral Rodriguez. The conversation took place over a secured channel, with Councillor Veltar speaking directly to the human military leader who had once sat in their chambers as an outcast. "Admiral Rodriguez," Veltar began, her voice carrying the harmonic frequencies that indicated deep distress in her species. "We need your help. The Devourers have broken through our defenses. Entire worlds are dying." Rodriguez's response was cold and measured. "That's interesting, Counselor. 5 years ago, you told us we were too dangerous to trust with galactic security. You said we were too violent to be part of your peaceful alliance. Now you want our violence to save you." "Please," Veltar begged, abandoning the formal speech patterns of Council protocol. "Billions of innocent beings are dying. Whatever mistakes we made, they don't deserve this fate." "You're right," Rodriguez replied. "They don't deserve to be abandoned by their leaders the way you abandoned them and the way you abandoned us. But unlike you, we don't leave our allies to die, even when those allies have betrayed us." The human fleet emerged from the darkness like a revelation. Hundreds of ships bearing the symbols of humanity and dozens of rescued species appeared throughout Council space, moving with coordination that seemed impossible. The vessel names told their story. Never Forgotten carried Zironian refugees who had become human allies. Last Hope was crewed by Draconis warriors fighting alongside human soldiers. Mercy's Dawn bore the combined flags of 12 species that had found new purpose under human leadership. But what shocked the Council most was not the size of the human fleet, but its composition. These weren't just human ships with human crews. They were integrated vessels where aliens and humans worked together as equals, sharing knowledge and fighting with a unity that the Council had never achieved even in their strongest years. Captain Steve Turner commanded the relief of Centauri Prime, arriving just as the last defensive satellites were falling to devour assault. His ship, the Redemption, folded space directly into the middle of the enemy formation, its weapons firing patterns that no Devour database could predict because they combined human tactical thinking with Draconis warrior instincts and Zeronian technological innovation. "All vessels execute combined pattern Delta," Turner ordered over the fleet communication network. "Show them what happens when the abandoned fight back." The battle for Centauri Prime became a masterclass in integrated warfare. Human ships provided the unpredictable mobility, Draconis vessels contributed heavy firepower, and rescued Zerionians operated advanced sensor networks that could track Devourer movements through dimensional space. The Devourers, for the first time in decades, found themselves outmatched and confused. Elena Vasquez coordinated the evacuation of civilian populations while the battle raged overhead. Her underground railroad had grown into a massive humanitarian network capable of moving entire planetary populations to safety in a matter of hours. But more importantly, the rescued civilians were not being relocated to refugee camps. They were being integrated into the growing alliance as full partners. "Centauri. Control, this is Sanctuary," she broadcast to the planet below. "We're not just here to evacuate you. We're here to offer you a choice. Come with us and help us build something better than what the Council offered. Help us create a galaxy where no one gets left behind." The response was overwhelming. Not just from the Centauri, but from Council species across the galaxy who had watched their leaders abandon world after world to save their own core territories. The human-led alliance offered something the Council never had, the promise that they would fight for everyone. Not just the strong and politically important. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as another Council world was saved by ships that flew under banners their former leaders had rejected. The irony was not lost on him. The Council had cast out humanity for being too violent, too dangerous to trust. Now that same violence was the only thing standing between the galaxy and complete annihilation. "Sir," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Paul Mitchell, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Council defense fleets. They want to join our alliance." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Tell them they're welcome, but they need to understand the terms. We don't fight for territories or political advantage. We fight to protect everyone, including the species they abandoned. If they can accept that, they can stand with us." The tide of the war was turning, but Rodriguez knew the hardest battles were still ahead. The Devourers were adapting to human tactics, and their main force was still moving toward the galaxy's center. The final confrontation would require everything humanity and their allies could bring to bear, and even then, victory was far from certain. The Battle of Centaurus Prime began at 0347 Galactic Standard Time, when long-range sensors detected the largest Devourer fleet ever assembled emerging from deep space. 3,000 biomechanical ships moved in perfect formation toward the heart of what had once been Council territory, their hulls pulsing with the consumed knowledge of 43 destroyed civilizations. Commander Paul Hayes stood on the bridge of his ship, the Liberty's Edge, watching the enemy fleet approach. He had been a junior officer during humanity's exile from the Council, and now he commanded one of the most advanced vessels in the human-led alliance. The ship's crew was a perfect example of what the alliance had become: humans working alongside Draconis warriors, Zeronian technicians, rescued Centauri, and even former Council species who had joined the fight. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures that don't match any previous Devourer attacks," reported Lieutenant Maria Santos from the sensor station. "It looks like they've been saving their strongest units for this final push." Hayes nodded grimly. Intelligence reports had suggested the Devourers were capable of evolution and adaptation far beyond what anyone had imagined. Each world they consumed added to their collective knowledge, and after 20 years of conquest, they had become something far more dangerous than the weapons their creators had originally designed. Admiral Rodriguez coordinated the defense from the Defiance, positioned at the center of the largest fleet in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species flew in formation around the human vessels, their combined firepower representing the united will of every civilization that refused to abandon their allies. The fleet was massive, but Hayes knew it might not be enough. Amy Parker commanded the Deep Strike Force aboard the New Horizon, her ship equipped with the most advanced space-folding drive humanity had ever built. Her mission was to penetrate the Devourer formation and locate their command ship, the massive bio-vessel that Dr. Rachel Kim believed was coordinating the entire swarm. "Parker to all strike vessels," she broadcast over the secured channel. "Remember, we're not trying to win a traditional battle here. We need to cut off the head of the snake while the main fleet keeps them busy. Stay close, stay mobile, and don't try to be heroes." The battle began with a coordinated assault that used every tactical innovation humanity and their allies had developed. Ships appeared and disappeared throughout the Devourer formation using space-folding technology, striking from angles that traditional military doctrine said were impossible. The biomechanical creatures tried to adapt, but the Alliance had learned to randomize their attack patterns in ways that defied prediction. Elena Vasquez commanded the evacuation fleet from her flagship, the Sanctuary, coordinating the removal of civilian populations from 7 worlds simultaneously. The Devourers had learned to target civilian centers first, using the refugees as bait to draw defending fleets into vulnerable positions. But Elena's Underground Railroad had evolved too, becoming a military humanitarian operation capable of moving entire planets' worth of people to safety while battles raged around them. "Sanctuary to all evacuation vessels," she broadcast over the civilian channels. "Priority Alpha evacuation is in progress on Korathi 7, Valdani Prime, and Nu. Zarian, military escort vessels are providing cover, but we need to move fast. These people have already lost one home to these monsters. We're not going to let them lose another." The space battle raged for 18 hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The Devourers were learning and adapting with every exchange, but the Alliance forces kept changing their tactics faster than the enemy could respond. It was a deadly dance of innovation and counter-innovation, played out across multiple star systems. Dr. Rachel Kim worked frantically in her mobile laboratory aboard the research vessel Discovery, analyzing real-time data from the battle to understand the Devourer's newest adaptations. What she found changed everything. "Admiral Rodriguez," she reported over the command channel, "I've found their central control node. It's not just a command ship, it's the original Morgoth weapon, the prototype that spawned all the others. It's hidden in the galactic core, using a quantum shield that makes it invisible to our sensors. How do we find something that's invisible?" Rodriguez asked. "We follow the control signals," Rachel replied. "Every Devourer unit is receiving constant updates from the central node. I can trace those signals back to their source, but someone would have to get very close to the core to do it. And Admiral, whoever goes on this mission won't be coming back. The quantum shield around the core is designed to trap anything that enters it." Captain John Mitchell volunteered for the suicide mission before Rodriguez could even ask for volunteers. Mitchell had lost his family when the Devourers attacked the research station where his wife and daughter had been working. He had been fighting this war not for glory or politics, but for revenge and the hope that no other family would suffer what his had endured. "I'll take the redemption," Mitchell said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was proposing. "She's got the most advanced folding drive in the fleet and the strongest shields. If anyone can punch through that quantum barrier, it's us." Rodriguez wanted to refuse, to find another way, but the tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Devourers were adapting to Alliance tactics faster than expected, and several human ships had already been lost. The window of opportunity was closing. "John, you know what this means?" Rodriguez said quietly over a private channel. "The quantum field around the core will prevent any escape. You and your crew won't be able to fold space back out." "I know, sir," Mitchell replied. "But if we don't stop the source, everything we've built, everyone we've saved, it all dies anyway. My crew knows the score. We're all volunteers." The Redemption broke away from the main battle, using its advanced drives to fold space in a series of jumps that took it toward the galactic core. Mitchell's crew worked with the quiet efficiency of people who had accepted their fate, but were determined to make their sacrifice meaningful. As they approached the core region, the quantum interference grew stronger. Stars became distorted through the viewscreen, and the ship's instruments began showing impossible readings. They were entering a region of space that had been twisted by ancient Morgoth technology, where the normal rules of physics no longer applied. "Captain, I'm detecting the central node," reported his science officer, Lieutenant David Park. "It's massive, sir. Bigger than anything we've ever seen. The bioship extends for over 1,000 kilometers, and it's completely integrated with some kind of quantum control matrix." Mitchell stared at the viewscreen as the Devourer command ship came into view. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a fusion of organic and mechanical technology that pulsed with the stolen life force of 43 consumed worlds. Neural pathways visible through its translucent hull carried information at the speed of light, coordinating the actions of thousands of Devourer units across the galaxy. "All hands, this is the captain," Mitchell announced over the ship's communication system. "We're about to do something that will end this war and save billions of lives. I want you all to know that it has been my honor to serve with you, and that what we do here today will be remembered forever." The Redemption activated its quantum bomb, a weapon that Dr. Rachel Kim had designed based on captured Morgoth technology. The device would create a cascade reaction in the quantum field surrounding the core, destroying both the central command node and everything within a 50-kilometer radius. As the ship approached the central node, Mitchell opened a communication channel to Admiral Rodriguez. "For everyone we couldn't save in time," he transmitted, "tell them we kept our promise. No one gets left behind." The Redemption disappeared into the quantum field surrounding the Devourer command ship. For a moment, there was silence across the galaxy as every Devourer unit stopped moving simultaneously. Then the explosion came, a blast of quantum energy that rippled across space-time itself, severing the connection between the central node and every Devourer unit in existence. Across dozens of star systems, the biomechanical swarm simply shut down. Their hulls went dark, their weapons stopped firing, and they began to drift in space like empty shells. The war that had consumed the galaxy for 20 years ended in an instant, as the controlling intelligence that had driven the Devourers was finally destroyed. The aftermath was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council as a political entity was finished, its authority broken by years of abandoning their allies and hiding behind barriers while others died. But in its place arose something new, the Terran Alliance, led not by humans alone but by all. The species who had learned that survival required unity and mutual support. Admiral Rodriguez stood before the new Galactic Assembly, addressing representatives from over 100 species. Many were races that the Council had written off as extinct but had survived under human protection. Others were former Council species who had learned hard lessons about the cost of abandonment. "The age of leaving people behind is over," Rodriguez declared. "We've seen what happens when we turn our backs on those who need help." The Devourers were created by a species that had been betrayed by its allies.